So we sold everything we owned and moved into our tiny house on wheels the day Spain went back into lockdown. This is the story of how we ended up living in our van while we renovated it. Come for the chaos and stick around to the end for the tips. Maybe you can use them in your own van build. Exhibit A.
Ready? 3, 2, 1.
Hi there, I'm Elisa. After years in the tech industry, I was exhausted by the pressure. So I quit the capitalist hustle. Now I live in a tiny house with my partner and pup, learning to live simply and stress-free. I share that journey here. Hit subscribe and join us in the slow carve.
You gonna be part of the film? You have wood glue on your face. No, Ness. I'm just gonna enjoy my little bit of coffee by our freshly built storage area. Welcome back, carvers. Today I wanted to chit chat about how we ended up doing a DIY RV remodel in the middle of COVID. Pretty much unplanned. So you might think we're totally nuts, and I would probably back you up. So the backstory is last February 2020. At that point, we'd been talking about moving into a van or a tiny house for about 2 years and started actually looking at campgrounds and RVs. But we decided not to pull the trigger. I remember one night after visiting one of the campgrounds, we came home and we both kind of just looked at each other out of the blue and we're like, no, not ready. At this point, I had pretty much come to breaking point at my job and I knew I was going to be leaving soon. My visa renewal was going to be up at the same time, which really complicated the next few months of our life. Spoiler alert, a year. And we decided that it was just going to be too much change at once. So since we had control, we decided to postpone it for a bit. Come 1 month later, all of the world went into lockdown and we ended up spending almost 90 days in our tiny flat in Barcelona. Once we were released, it wasn't long before rumors of a second lockdown started happening. So we went full steam ahead. I remember texting my friend and being like, that's it. We've got to escape to the mountains. We've got to make this shit happen because we are not getting locked back inside. That is when we found Ida. And then got massively delayed by bureaucracy. Paperwork didn't match this paperwork, didn't match this paperwork. So we ended up spending 2 or 3 months trying to solve it. In the end, we managed to pick her up the day we went back into that second lockdown. It was utter chaos. We ended up picking her up by ourselves because the day we'd planned on doing it wouldn't have worked anymore and all our friends were working. So we ended up parking her. I'll show you some footage. Ass in the middle of this tiny small street. People couldn't get by. It was insane. We ended up moving everything from the flat by ourselves into the caravan in under an hour and escaping the city. And this is where our DIY renovation story truly begins. So the original plan was not to live in the RV while we renovated it. We actually wanted to be smart about it and live in the space for a little bit to understand what we wanted to keep and what we wanted to fix. Originally, we were thinking we'd go back up to Scotland where Chris is from and park in a family member's driveway and be able to sleep safely and renovate the space. And that's not how it worked out. So because we were back in quarantine, we thought, fuck it. We'd found ourselves parked up in basically a glorified parking lot for caravans. There's no one here. If we make a bunch of noise, there's not really anyone to disturb, and we suspected we were going to be there for a while, so we could kind of set up shop and use some of the outdoor space and really just go ham. It was utter chaos. We were living in a construction zone. My eyes itch just thinking about it. We fit our entire lives in 14 square meters, which is like less than 150 square feet. Everything from tools, supplies, to where we were bathing and eating, to where we were sleeping. I mean, we were a bit nuts. And we were totally loving it. Every single day we'd have to unpack and repack all of the supplies for safety's sake so that we weren't hurting ourselves or our dog, making sure that things weren't like thieved in the middle of the night. There was a lot of prep work every single day. The other thing was just that we were in a constant state of filth. There was no escaping the dust and the muck. Lo and behold, we started ripping stuff out and encountered mold. And we didn't have anywhere to sleep, and we couldn't break the quarantine laws. We couldn't cross borders, so we couldn't escape to anyone's house. So we ended up like sleeping with windows open and bleaching stuff during the day really harshly and leaving all the windows open till it dried and staying outside as long as we could. There was a lot. We did the best with the circumstances we had. I know it probably wasn't the safest thing to be sleeping in the same space that we were dealing with mold, or sanding the cupboards in the same space that we were cooking, but it was kind of a blast. I think it was a dream that we'd had for so long at this point that once we had our hands on it, once we were in the thick of moving, that we couldn't help but enjoy ourselves. If you're going to do something this wild, here are the few tips that I suggest you think about as you get on with your build. Whether you're doing it alone or you're doing it with a partner, always remember, take a deep breath and try to be kind. Be gentle with the progress you're making. You're going to come up against challenges that you don't expect. Things are going to take longer. The best route forward is just a smile, a breather, walk away if you need to, but remember love. Self-love, love for your partner, aim for being kind. There was also a strategy to how we worked really well together. Divide and conquer. Also one of our mottos. Pick tasks that you enjoy and then own them. Obviously, it's great to ask for input, but don't be a backseat driver. Unless it's dangerous, unless you don't think it's going to be livable thereafter, let the person just own it and get it done. If each person has their own space and they get to kind of make the decisions, it minimizes the amount of opportunities for arguments. You get very few exceptions to this, so choose wisely. Don't be a backseat driver. Obviously, so much of what I talk about is tiny living, so this one's a bit ironic. But my next suggestion is make space. I know, I get it. My whole channel is about tiny living and alternative living. You're like, what are you talking about space? You've already told me you live in 14 square meters. What I mean is, in the same spirit of divide and conquer, some days I would continue to toil away on the RV and Chris would go work outside. What that allowed me to do was get super frustrated and pissed off and have to take a breather without anyone to direct it to. Being conscientious about giving each other space, especially in moments where you know you're probably going to get frustrated, helped us avoid any sort of friction. Next. Order is everything. I mean, the order in which you do things, the order in which you keep things put away. I am not the most organized of people, but it was a lifesaver. Most importantly, plot your steps ahead of time. One of the things we did that made a huge difference, even though it was not painless, was making sure that we painted the bathroom and the sink at the same time. There was multiple layers of paint, each which took days, if not weeks, to dry. Instead of doing them separately, which would have extended how much time we were without water, we did them together, and I would basically alternate between the two rooms to be able to maximize the time we had to wait. In the end, it still took about 3 weeks without running water, but that would have been extended to 6 weeks if we had to do them individually. Also, just keep track of your shit. Put stuff away after you've used it. It really helps when not only yourself, but if you're working with somebody else, you can always come back to the same place knowing where you're going to find things. It helps avoid frustration. Also, time wasted. Last but not least, why? And remind yourself often, why are we doing this? Look, I hated my previous job. I was so stressed out. Downsizing into a van and living in it full time allowed us to really minimize our expenses. That allowed me to take less work and have the time to heal from burnout. No matter how intense the renovation got, it was still so much more joyous. It was a nice kind of hard work. Even though it was long hours, it was respite for my mind and I was able to kind of toil away with my hands. I loved it. At the end of the day, this is an avenue for adventure. This is a lifestyle for us. And that was something that we were really excited about, especially in that first month of renovation. So we reminded each other of that often. And it was something that at the end of every day, we reflected on, and it kept us really motivated through the process. So 5 months in, and we're already on round 2 of renovation, so it couldn't be that bad. Thanks so much for popping by today, guys. If you want to see the final before and afters, now that we're almost done, tell me which room you want to see first in the comments below. I think the kitchen might be my favorite. Anyway, until next week, guys, stay safe.